Okay.
So good evening, Huron Valley. Glad that you can join.
So clearly we're having some technical difficulties with Dr. Salah's ability to stream at this point. I think he signed off and will be signing back in momentarily. Mr. Tavernier, I'm wondering, do you want to talk a little bit about your topic tonight? And when Dr. Salah returns, we'll turn it back over to him.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah, thanks, Kim. We'll see if Paul's able to rejoin us here to start this off. Paul?
Yeah,
there he is.
Sorry about that. You have to love technology.
There you go.
The wonders of technology. Hopefully I'm not booted out again, but if I am, I would just ask John if you jump into the update as it relates to teaching and learning and some of those components, and Jeffrey as a backup. Once he's concluded that, if you could touch on some of our bond projects. But hopefully I'm with you. I don't know what you missed in terms of my introductory comments. Let me just start off again by saying thank you everyone for being here. The agenda for this evening, I want to touch on our graduating class of 2020. I'd like to touch on kindergarten orientation and our plans to welcome our newest students to Huron Valley Schools. Third, I wanted to provide a quick update on our food distribution plan. Fourth, I'd like to touch on budget projections for the upcoming school year. Next, I'd like to touch briefly on some of the action in the legislature and really ask our parents for support and consideration around a few talking points. Then we'll spend a few minutes talking about bond projects, and we'll end it off with what next school year might look like from an instructional perspective. So let me just take it from the top and start off with our seniors. So first and foremost, I just want to start off by acknowledging all the hard work and efforts of the graduating class of 2020. I'm incredibly proud of that entire group for the dedication and your strength throughout this entire ordeal. I know that this has been the most challenging for our graduating class of seniors because, frankly, you haven't been given the opportunity to bring closure to your pre-K through 12 experience. And I know that that's not right. And I know it doesn't help the situation, but I just want to send out my deepest sympathies to you as we continue to navigate some of the questions that are so complex and challenging related to executing the stay home, stay safe order. That being said, there are two main topics I want to touch on this evening. We have a letter that will be going out to Huron Valley families in the next, if not this evening, then certainly by tomorrow, outlining several key items as it relates to our graduating class. For honors, for our senior honors night, we are producing an honors event, and that will be done virtually, and we plan to actually create a video document that will be broadcast and distributed the last week of May. Our plan is to distribute that via our various websites, our social media channels, as well as the Huron Valley Schools TV. So senior honors will be done completely in a produced format, and that video will be pushed out, recognizing and honoring our students. Students will also receive commemorative items to celebrate that event, as well as a printed program of the event that's included in the students' end of year packet. So that's senior honors. The second item I wanted to touch on is commencement. And frankly, we've really been trying to hold off and wait as long as we can to make any decisions regarding commencement, in hopes that we could do something that was in a semblance of face-to-face. And as each day goes by, that seems to become less and less likely and more of a challenge. And so with that said, we're really looking at the governor's guidance related to the Michigan Safe Start strategy. And that strategy speaks to what the opening of schools might look like, and what the opening of the economy might look like. So with that said, where we've landed at this point is we are planning a multi-phased approach to commencement. Phase one will include a drive-in commencement, where students will be invited to decorate their cars and come to school with their families at a designated time that will be communicated by your principal. The dates for that right now are Harbor High School, June 3rd and 4th, IA West, June 6th, Lakeland High School, June 6th, and Milford High School, June 7th. Phase two is the production of a video, which will be commemorating the commencement events that include photos of students, caps and gowns, recorded speeches from student representatives, as well as administration. Phase three will include, at a later date, we'd like to invite our seniors to come in and have their photograph taken by a professional photographer that will be in their cap and gown as well. And then we also have a final commemorative publication, which will be a special insert in the spinal column featuring the class of 2020. So we continue to problem solve all the obstacles that have been presented to all public schools across the state of Michigan. And we felt it was really important to bring closure and have some sort of a commencement ceremony, even if it was in a drive-in type capacity. There will be much more information following from your building principals over the next couple of days regarding the logistics of all of those pieces, as well as opportunities for students to access the buildings to drop off books and uniforms and band instruments, as well as clean out lockers and take care of those housekeeping type things. We will continue to monitor the situation, and if should something else become a possibility in terms of celebrating our seniors, we will absolutely take a very close and hard look at that. It really will be dependent upon what the governor does in terms of the stay home, stay safe order. So that addresses the first big topic regarding our graduating class of 2020. And again, I would just emphasize, I know you have questions, parents and students that are listening to this. Please just hold tight. You will receive not only communication from me with more detail, but you will receive a communication with a lot more detail from your building principals, not only from Lakeland and Milford, but also from Harbor High School as well, and IA West. The second item I wanted to touch on is kindergarten orientation. We typically have a kindergarten orientation where families can actually visit each building across the district and meet their principal, meet their kindergarten teachers, and get a good overview of what might be expected in the upcoming school year. Given the circumstances of the pandemic, we've had to take that kindergarten orientation to a online virtual type format. And there's really two phases to this. One, I would just encourage you to visit our website, hvs.org. At the top of our website, there is a banner that is a notification regarding kindergarten orientation. I would just invite you to click on that banner, and that will take you to another page where there's a tremendous amount of detail and information regarding what kindergarten, what you can expect as parents as it relates to kindergarten in the upcoming school year. It also speaks to the registration process. I would just add right out of the gate, I recognize that there is tremendous uncertainty as it relates to what next school year might look like. We continue to navigate those circumstances, but for our parents out there, I just want to assure you, we will absolutely follow the medical advice of the experts, and we will fully comply with all of the expectations as have been outlined by medical professionals and that are dictated to us by the state legislature, and heed the best practices that exist in the science as it relates to keeping our students safe should we have face-to-face instruction in the fall. The next item I wanted to touch on also actually relates to that kindergarten orientation piece. We are also going to offer a virtual kindergarten meet and greet with each of our building principals. That will take place on May 20th. And again, if you visit our homepage, you will be able to select a link that will take you to that virtual meet and greet with the building principal. The third piece is quick, and it relates to food service. I just wanted to, again, thank all of our food service workers, as well as our transportation department and our volunteers. This week, we will hit the 100,000 meals threshold, which is just tremendous. I mean, since this entire pandemic has started, to serve over 100,000 meals is a monumental task. And I just have to give a shout out to all of our food service and transportation workers for their continued dedication and support to be on the front lines and feed our students and meet that most basic need of our community. So the next piece I want to touch on is it's somewhat more, it's a pretty heavy topic, and it relates to budget projections for the upcoming school year. Actually, this Friday is an event that is called the May Revenue Estimating Conference. And at this May Revenue Estimating Conference, school districts and businesses and local government will hear a lot more about what our budget looks like for the current fiscal year, as well as what the government is projecting for the upcoming fiscal year. I will tell you that as of 3 weeks ago, we believed that we could see the worst case scenario being a $400 per pupil cut to the school district, which would be about $3.5 million. As of this week, it seems like it could be a much greater amount. And so for those in our listening audience that are unfamiliar with the way with which schools are funded, there's really two main categories that I would emphasize. And the first is the legislature and the governor, they essentially propose versions of their budget. And that budget is then, there's some discussion amongst the executive branch, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. And they ultimately arrive at consensus, and they determine a dollar amount per pupil that districts will receive of either increase or decrease. This year, we're hearing that there's going to be a significant decrease. The second piece that school districts really utilize for budgeting purposes relates to student enrollment. So the number of students that come to our schools is another indicator of what our budget will look like for the upcoming school year. So those two factors, per pupil funding that's determined on an annual basis, and the number of students that come into our doors every single day throughout the school year. And attendance matters. You know, there are days that we call count days, and those days are used to determine what our enrollment looks like. There hasn't been more uncertainty in a budget year in my 20 years as an educator than this upcoming year that we're facing. There's uncertainty in terms of what the per pupil cut will be next year, and there's uncertainty in terms of what enrollment will look like and how students will be counted, if you will. So we are looking at a range between $400 per pupil cut all the way to, this week we heard, as much as $2,000 to $3,000 per pupil cut. Those are just astronomical numbers, especially when we realize that we can't control for what enrollment might look like next school year if parents choose not to send their students to school and the legislature doesn't take action to address that. So to give you some context, right now we have about $5.5 million in what you would call our savings account. If the per pupil cut were $400 per pupil and our enrollment remained exactly the same, that's a loss of $3.5 million. If the worst case that we've heard of $3,000 per pupil, which would just be totally unfathomable, if that were the case and our enrollment remained exactly the same, it would be a $26.4 million cut that we would somehow have to come up with. And so needless to say, as your superintendent, I'm deeply concerned about the budget for next year, and I'm anxiously and eagerly awaiting what we will hear on Friday come out of the May Revenue Estimating Conference. And so that leads to legislative attention. I'm often asked by community members, well, Dr. Salah, what can we do to support the district in this extreme time of uncertainty? Well, I have three main talking points that I'd like to ask you to consider. And I've continued to express these talking points with our local leaders, and I'm making arrangements to have these conversations at the federal level as well. So the first concept for our listening audience out there that I really want you to pay attention to, please, if you take away nothing else from this virtual coffee, these 3 points are critical. And so if you have a pen handy and a piece of paper, jot them down. First and foremost, what the legislature could do to help us and hold us harmless is to control for that factor that relates to enrollment. If we could at least have some control and be held harmless this current upcoming school year based upon what our enrollment is as of the 1920 school year, that would help us with one of those factors and help us with budgeting for the upcoming school year. So I would encourage you, reach out to your legislators, local and federal, and talk with them about holding harmless the enrollment equation of our budgeting factors for next school year. Hold us to the 1920 levels. The second piece, which is also very simple and straightforward, school districts across the state of Michigan, if they fall below what we call 5% in their savings account, which is our $5.5 million, then they find their way on a list at the state level, and there are potential sanctions that could lead up to state takeover of local school districts. If the state legislature could give a reprieve on that 5% for a period of time, should we fall below it as a result of these cuts, that would provide some greater flexibility for us to hopefully get through the next year or two as we navigate these uncertain budget times. And the third piece that I really want to encourage you to speak with legislators about, especially at the federal level, is a call for equal distribution of any federal stimulus monies based on per pupil enrollment. So right now, federal dollars are allocated based upon Title I methodologies. And so the way with which Title I is distributed is based upon free and reduced lunch rates, not on enrollment by school district. And so the issues we're dealing with are really around general operating expenditures. And so if the federal dollars, any that we receive, could be distributed on an equal basis across the state based upon enrollment, it would be a tremendous support for Huron Valley schools and assist us with our programming that we offer to students. So the last two items, one is the bond. I'm pleased to announce that on May 7th, the governor did lift and provided some greater flexibility regarding construction projects. And so since May 7th, there's been a flurry of activity in the school district due to your support of the bond and sinking fund projects. And so again, I want to thank you, because it truly warms my heart when I drive by, Lakeland or Milford or any of our other buildings where we have projects that are ongoing. I had an opportunity today to walk the site at Milford High School, the stadium area, and to just see all the turf that has been removed and all the gravel is being replaced. It's just encouraging to see all that work that our students are going to benefit from as a result of your support. And so I want to just have Mr. Van Gotham, our Assistant Superintendent for Business and Operations, delve into a little more detail regarding some of those projects. So if I could turn it over to you, Jeffrey.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Salah. Thank you again to the community. I want to reiterate, as a taxpayer in Huron Valley schools, with children that attend our schools, it's really a wonderful sentiment to see that the community was supportive of our bond and sinking fund initiatives. And it's wonderful to be working on some of these projects. So a quick highlight, the first set of projects that was awarded were for some chillers and boilers in the district, specifically chillers at Country Oaks, Oak Valley Middle School, and Heritage Elementary, and then boilers at Country Oaks, Oak Valley Middle School, Highland, and Apollo. So those works are being taken care of right now. As a matter of fact, when we were at our administrative building today, we did see the chiller being removed and being taken away from that site at Heritage, which was wonderful. So that work is getting done, and then our chillers will be complete, and our boilers will be set up as well before the start of our cooling and warming seasons when we get back to school. Our second set of projects related around athletics, and it involves the turf fields at both Milford and Lakeland High School. It involves the tennis courts at both Milford and Lakeland High Schools, and then also the tennis courts at Milford and Lakeland High Schools. So that's a really exciting project, and that is underway, as Dr. Salah had mentioned. And I'm going to actually present here real briefly. I'm just going to show the viewing audience just a couple pictures from the site at Milford in specific. So if you give me 1 second here. So this is some of the site work that is taking place at Milford. You can see the turf has been pulled up, and this is actually the stone underneath, and then the track. This is again another picture of the Milford turf field if you're looking north from the south end. This is another shot again at the same spot looking north. Here you'll see the grandstand for the Milford High School Stadium, and then some of the gravel. So essentially with the Milford project, we not only took the turf off, but we're replacing the stone underneath and the drainage system as well, because those have just expired as a result of usage. Get another shot from across the field from the grandstand. And then here you see this is actually the tennis court set up at Milford High School. The tennis courts, along with the fences and obviously the nets, have been completely removed. This is the remaining concrete that needs to be picked up, and then they will start actually pouring the new tennis courts. And then just another picture from that site. So very exciting to be at the very beginning stages of the construction progress. And then the last project that that has been approved and will start work is a big paving project over again on the Milford High School campus that involves Watkins Boulevard, Bannerman, and then some of the parking lots associated with that area. So again, very excited and very thankful for the community that was extremely supportive of us in our bond and sinking fund initiatives. So thank you for that very much, Dr. Salah.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for sharing those wonderful details in the project and the pictures. It's exciting to see work being done at our sites. It's been a long time coming, and we haven't seen the level of construction, heavy machinery, and trucks rolling into our sites for quite some time. And so I truly take pride in the work that's being done, and I'm just so proud to be superintendent of Huron Valley, where the community put public education first and really sees the value in the future generations. So the next item I want to touch on relates to next school year. We've been getting some questions about what next school year is going to look like, and I just have to be completely honest and transparent with you. We really don't know what next school year is going to be like at this point. There's a lot of talk about social distancing, a lot of talk about, class sizes limited to 20 or 25. A lot of talk about everybody wearing masks and the sort. So frankly, what we are doing right now is we are preparing multiple contingencies depending upon multiple possible scenarios. We continue to work with our state associations, with the state level Michigan Department of Education, with our state legislators. We continue to heed the guidance of the governor's office in order to make the best possible decisions to keep our kids safe in the upcoming school year. And that might look different next year. But what we know is we're going to provide an education for our Huron Valley students, whether that's face-to-face, whether that's a hybrid model where it's partly face-to-face, it's partly in school, whether that's a completely online option. That's another option that we're considering and looking at. We're just trying to prepare for every possible contingency. So I want to just encourage you, families, if you haven't enrolled or submitted any of your enrollment information, whether you're a Huron Valley resident or a school of choice student family, or you're a family of an incoming kindergarten student, we're going to have something for you. There will be an education for your child next year. So I want to encourage you, complete that paperwork and get registered for the upcoming school year. And so with that said, I'd like to ask Mr. Tavernier. Mr. Tavernier is our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching, Learning, and Technology, and really is leading many of our instructional efforts across the district. And so with that, John, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Sure. Thanks so much, Dr. Salah. I appreciate the opportunity again to talk to our community and our parents. And, the last 5 weeks, believe it or not, today is actually the 1 month mark. We began our phase 3 online learning plan on April 13th. And with it being May 13th, we're already 1 month into this, new environment. And I've got to say, over 20 years in education, it's all about relationships. And our teachers and parents have really come together. And thank you to all of you for your efforts to allow those relationships to continue in a virtual environment. Our teachers have been phenomenal, doing a lot of unique and creative ways to, obviously engage students through Google Meet and in a virtual format. But I know teachers have been really going above and beyond to try to meet the needs of all of our families. And so this last couple of weeks, we've really been collecting some data. I know many of you received the survey links that went out. We surveyed parents, our staff, and this week we're surveying students across the district for some feedback on what's working. How has the phase 3 learning plan rolled out? Is it meeting the needs? I know there's been a lot of discussion around is the office hours, the contact, are teachers available to meet the needs of students and parents as we've been rolling this out. We've had just under 1,397 parents completed the survey, and really is providing valuable data to the Teaching, Learning, and Technology Department as we evaluate the plan and look at what changes we may need to make going forward. So thank you to all of you that have provided that feedback. And again, staff and students, that data is being collected, and we're putting together the reports and making adjustments where needed. Teachers have had to reinvent the classroom over the last month and 4 or 5 weeks here. And so, as Dr. Salah said, as we look forward to the future, what will be the demands? What will our environment look like? What will teaching and learning look like as we look forward? And we're really planning as a district for all options. We certainly hope that we have students back in our classrooms as soon as possible. We look forward to that day when we can welcome everybody back into our buildings. But until then, we want to make sure that we're prepared as a district to provide teaching and learning to all students, junior kindergarten, our early childhood students, all the way through 12th grade. And we want to be flexible enough to be able to meet those needs. And so if that means we're in buildings and maybe it's a hybrid approach, and as Dr. Salah said, maybe it's a lower capacity, or we're having to adjust our normal routines, we want to be prepared for that. We also want to be prepared for students or families that may be impacted going forward from this COVID-19, and how can we provide learning materials and resources for students that may not be able to attend school. And what if we continue to be in a stay home, stay safe scenario as we are right now? We want to be prepared for that. And so that's, again, that data that we're collecting and the feedback from families across the district is really valuable for us in those plans. So I'm happy to announce tonight we are really excited about working on launching the Huron Valley Schools Virtual Academy. And this is something that we're actively working on now, preparing. We are planning to roll out the initial phases of that virtual academy here in the next couple weeks, and we will have content and courses available for students starting at the high school level, and really targeting those students that are looking at earning credit, high school credit, and having that virtual academy ready for this summer. So excited about that. A lot more to come. Be looking at checking our website, hvs.org, as well as our Friday forum and other communications on more to come on what that virtual academy will include, what it'll look like. And while we'll be starting at the high school, we are looking at options for, as I mentioned, all families, from our early childhood programs through the high schools. So more to come on that, but that's a quick update on things that we've been working on in teaching, learning, and technology. So that'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Salah.
Thanks, John. Great job. And so before we open it up for questions, a couple of final thoughts for me here. What I've recognized is so critical through this entire process is that collaboration is critical to our success as a school district and as a community. Parents, I want to thank you. I know how, as a father of 3 with a working spouse, I know how challenging it is to try to work, 10 or 12 hours a day and support your kids while they're engaging in distance learning. So parents, I want to thank you. It takes a partnership with you. Our principals have been phenomenal, stepping up to answer questions and problem solve as they've continued to receive questions from the community. I want to thank our principals. Again, I've mentioned our food service and our transportation for their continued dedication. Our teachers, I'm just eternally grateful to you for everything you've done to step up through, especially through this phase 3. plan. I know many of you have children of your own at home, and you're juggling a full-time job and meeting the needs of your children at school while meeting the needs of your own children in the home. So I just want to thank you for that. And I want to also just give a shout out to all those teachers that have sent emails to me, to the COAT team. We appreciate you, and we appreciate your kind words as we've continued to try to navigate some of these incredibly challenging circumstances in your patients as we've navigated. I want to thank our secretaries for their continued work at home. No one's stopping. It takes a village to make a school go, even if it's online. And so thank you, secretaries, our paraprofessionals. And I had a conversation with Kim Rabideau, one of our paraprofessionals in the district, and we only had 30 minutes because she was getting ready for a Zoom call where she was going to be supporting some of our special education students with some of their IEP goals. And so, it takes everybody. Our central office team has continued to work day in and day out. They have not taken, a breath, barely even so on the weekends. And last, I just want to thank our Board of Education. They've been incredibly flexible through a really challenging time frame. I mean, had to call several special board meetings to get bond projects approved. We've had to do emergency Chromebook purchases, and our Board of Education, they're not compensated to be board members, but they make their obligations to the school district work. They fit it within their own responsibilities and requirements. And so thank you to our Board of Education as well. And last, what I want to leave you with is I just want to go back to the legislative talking points that I shared. I'm going to repeat them real quick here. Enrollment, hold harmless. Flexibility regarding the 5%. And call for equal distribution of any federal stimulus monies. I emphasize that again because, I know sometimes it's uncomfortable to reach out to a legislator. I'm not saying if you don't agree with those concepts, please don't feel like, I'm pushing hard on you here. But I feel like those are three simple, straightforward talking points that anybody can agree with, regardless of party lines. And so I just want to encourage you, if you agree with those concepts, please reach out to your local, state, and federal legislators. And so with that said, Kim, do we have any questions?
Oh, yes, we do. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Salah, you really just addressed one of the first questions, and that would be, could we put those talking points in an email out to parents? We can communicate directly and put those into writing and send those out via our principals and other ways of distributing those. So the answer to that question is yes, and you touched on that, and thank you for repeating those. The first question comes from Marie, and she says the amount of schoolwork is too much when you have so many children to take care for and to help. Friends at other HBS schools don't seem to have as much. Why isn't the schoolwork the same for each grade in the district? So Dr. Salah, you may want to handle that one, or ask Mr. Tavernier.
So I think we can tag team this one, John. Let me just start off by saying, we've heard feedback, frankly, both ways. We've heard feedback that, the work is too much or the work is not enough. So I would just touch on that first and foremost. But the second thing I would mention, and then I'd invite Mr. Tavernier to jump in here, is, this is tailor-made direct instruction for students based upon the learning that is taking place in each individual teacher's classroom. This isn't a matter of, let's identify, X websites and, worksheets and shoot those out to students. I mean, our teachers are getting together in their professional learning communities. They're identifying essential learning targets for each week, and they're providing that new learning opportunities for students to tailor make to individual classrooms and meet the needs of students. So I would just encourage you, if you feel like it's too much, that's certainly, feedback that is helpful for us that you can share as a part of the survey. You can also share if you're struggling with aspects of the assignments or the work, reach out to your teacher as well. John, anything else?
Yeah, I was going to say, just reiterate it. The intent of our online learning plan is that it's customized, so it does look a little bit different because it's specific to what the needs are in each individual classroom. So we know prior to March 12th that teachers were progressing through the curriculum, but they all may not have been at the exact same point in the curriculum, in the resources, and so adapting from what had been taught prior to the stay home, stay safe order to where we are now. So just some flexibility in there. I would also add, if you are as a family feeling, that it is overwhelming, that your students are not able to progress in the same way. And maybe it's not, if you have multiple kids in your family, you're finding that, two of your students are doing okay, they're doing fine, and one is really struggling. Reach out to your classroom, your teacher, let them know, the challenges that you're having at home. And we've really built that flexibility into the plan too. Our teachers want to meet you where you're at, want to be able to support you and ensure that you have all the tools you need at home to be able to support teaching and learning going forward. So again, if you're struggling or you're feeling a little, need some additional support, please reach out. And I also want to mention, and I mentioned this last time at our last coffee hour, is that we have staff in the building specifically supporting social emotional needs of students and families. And so those resources are also available if needed. Feel free again to reach out to your classroom teacher. Each of our buildings have school social workers that are available to can help manage some of the social emotional needs that you may be experiencing.
Thank you both. The next question comes from Josh. What are the dates to watch for regarding the decision on remote learning for fall 2020? Dr. Salah, that may reference specifically the governor's 6-phase plan.
Yes. So Josh, there's a 6-phase plan that's been rolled out by the state of Michigan, and the phases, and I would just encourage you can find this online as well. The phases, it's titled Michigan Safe Start, a plan to re-engage Michigan's economy. The phases include phase 1, which is uncontrolled growth, which is where we were back in March. 2, persistent spread. 3 is flattening. And the governor's office has indicated right now we are in phase 3, which is flattening. Phase 4, which is improving. Phase 5, which is containing. And phase 6, which is post-pandemic. We're still a ways off from phase 6. So at this point, there are no timelines in the governor's Michigan Safe Start plan. So at this point, we are just continuing to monitor and will continue to provide feedback and support. I will tell you that I am personally sitting on a Oakland County task force that is charged with thinking about the multiple ways with which schools might reopen in the fall. And we are working hard to try and develop criteria, but there are so many unknowns that we need to tackle before we're ready to release that information. But you have my commitment. We will continue to work in order to problem solve. And as additional details and information are made available to us, we will be transparent and communicate that information with our community.
Thank you. The next question is probably for Mr. Tavernier. What are the pros and cons of taking a G versus a letter grade? How will a G be perceived by colleges versus a letter grade? And I think at the last coffee hour you touched on this, John, if you don't mind addressing that again.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, we did spend some time on this question, and if you didn't get a chance to watch the coffee hour back on April 22nd, that link is still available on the website, and you can go back and look at that. But really the difference between a G and a letter grade is that a G is credit. So it shows on a student's transcript that a student took a course material, completed the course material, and received credit. And so that will be shown on the transcript. However, a G does not carry with it any grade points. So in terms of a grade point average or a cumulative grade point average, there's no calculation with a G. So it's as if the course didn't exist in terms of a grade point average calculation. So the advantage to taking a G again versus a grade could be if a student was struggling in a course prior to the shutdown, completing the material but not having a negative impact on an overall grade point average, or again the opposite could be true. So that's really the difference between a letter grade and a grade point average and a G for credit. As far as how colleges or universities or the decision that will be made in terms of enrollment, again, I think all colleges and universities recognize that this semester for schools across the nation were impacted by COVID-19. And so that's certainly going to be a factor in consideration when looking at students' transcripts and making enrollment decisions. If you have any specific questions about your son or daughter and their future plans, certainly reach out to your counselor at Milford or Lakeland High School.
Thank you, Mr. Tavernier. If parents decide not to send their kids to school in the fall, will there be a remote learning program in place which will be considered or will they be considered as unenrolled? So, John, you touched on that a little bit with the virtual academy. We hope that obviously parents are comfortable with the program that we roll out in the fall, whether that's on in person or in our virtual academy. But do you want to touch on that?
Sure. And yeah, I think it'd be very important. Dr. Salah mentioned this. In order to participate in any of those options, we certainly want families to enroll. So, it'd be very important to be enrolled in Huron Valley. And depending on what school looks like in the fall, any of those opportunities will be available to those students who are enrolled in Huron Valley schools. So whether that's a hybrid model, whether we're back in our buildings, which we all are hoping for, or if it's participating fully online in a virtual environment, those options will be made available to those students who are enrolled in the district. So we really encourage families considering that or interested in those options to make sure that enrollment is completed. Dr. Salah, anything further? I know you made some comments referencing that earlier as well.
Yeah, thanks, John. I do want to jump in here for a moment, and that goes back to the legislative attention piece that I mentioned earlier, and that relates to the enrollment component. I can't emphasize enough, families, enroll your children in school for next year. We are going to have something for your child. That is what we are working on night and day at this present moment, and we will not stop until we have multiple options available for our students for next school year. So I would highly encourage you not to avoid enrollment because then that will disqualify you from services from Huron Valley Schools. So enroll and be prepared and we will be prepared, frankly, for any course of action that comes our way next year.
Thank you both. Mr. Van Gotham, this one's probably for you. What is the expected completion timing of the 2 high school tennis courts, stadium turf concessions?
Thank you, Mrs. Root. So the initial goal had been that we would have those courts and fields ready for the beginning of school. I'm happy to announce that as a result of the order being lifted is that we've really got about a 4-week start on the projects that are taking place at both Lakeland and Milford. So barring any weather challenges, the district's goal will still be to have those facilities open around the middle of August if possible.
Thank you. And the next one is probably also yours. Can the bond money allocations be changed with a change in priorities?
The bond is approved with a specific set of projects. So if there was any real material change, we might have to bring that back to the state of Michigan. But for the most part, the projects that we have laid out will be the ones that we will focus on. And really, To that point, I think it's important to note that if we do shift to a virtual or online setting, that we may have to look at our priorities as it relates to the buildings that we utilize.
Thank you. The next is really a comment from Nicholas. He said, shout out to all of the administration, teachers, and volunteers for the signs and balloons for all the seniors yesterday. It brought a smile to our son's face. So that's pretty nice. The next question is, what online formats are you exploring?
In terms of next school year?
I believe so. And so John obviously touched on that with his discussion about the virtual academy. And so I would just encourage, I believe that there's more information to come in terms of what that structure looks like. I don't know if either of you want to add anything to that.
So, John, I think the question is somewhat referring to, the standardization processes across the district in terms of platform like Google Classroom, where the content might be housed and delivered. So I will just say that we're absolutely looking at, as we move into next school year, and certainly the possibility of needing to go even more robust in terms of our virtual offerings. We are looking at that standardized platform that would be utilized across the entire district. And in terms of the delivery of content, that could range from a multitude of methods, including video recording lessons at the secondary level. John, anything else you would add there? I'm suspecting that's what the question is referring to.
Yeah, I think in terms of platform, certainly the Google Apps for Education platform is something that we standardize on as a district, and everyone, all of our teachers have access to that. Many of our teachers are utilizing that, but I know especially at the lower elementary, there are other platforms that teachers had already implemented and were more suitable for shifting from the traditional classroom to an online environment, such as Seesaw and Class Dojo, and some of those other platforms I know are in use. For parents, that can be a challenge, especially if you have multiple students in different grade levels and having to jump from one system or one platform to another. So that's feedback that we have heard loud and clear, and we are looking at in terms of standardizing that as we look forward. The other piece is also the delivery of content. So that may be a Huron Valley teacher delivering that content in the class, but we also are looking at other opportunities or other methods. So I know many of our high school students are taking courses through Ingenuity, or many know them as E2020 courses. So that's another platform that's available in terms of progressing through content or having content available or delivered. So we're looking at all of that, and we'll be making decisions and announcements on what options will be available. We really want to make as many different options as available as possible, but also make it clear enough and systemic enough so that the ease of use for students that might be in multiple classes is also there. So more to come as it relates to what that online learning platform will look like in the future.
Also, there's a comment, shout out to the ESL staff. Just thought I'd pass that along. And then there is a question about, is the intent of the virtual academy to facilitate credit and student advancement in a standardized fashion in prep for remote learning to continue perhaps indefinitely, Mr. Tavernier?
Yes, absolutely. So the intent of the virtual academy is absolutely that students would be progressing through content and earning credit moving forward.
Okay. And there's one question that's kind of long, so I'm just going to take a piece of it. And that is, are there plans for live instruction via the web? This individual says, my children are early and elementary and do not learn well from videos, workbooks, etc. The opportunity to ask questions of the teacher would be important.
Yes, so with our virtual academy and starting as early as this, like I said, this summer as we roll this out, it will have live interaction with teachers moving forward. So as students are progressing through content, there'll be those live sessions. And then, of course, there'll be opportunity for students to work on their own and come back and meet regularly with teachers in a live format.
I would also add, that's an excellent question that was posed. Each grade level looks different. When we're talking about early elementary, we're talking about, kindergarten and pre-K, it just looks different. I mean, children cannot sit in front of a computer for 6 or 7 hours. So, we recognize the nuances and are working through what some of the best practices look like at each level. We still have a variety of questions that need to be answered, but as I mentioned earlier, we're committed to continue working through those questions.
So then, Dr. Salah, is there any chance of adding a phase that would include our seniors being able to have a more traditional graduation at a later date, perhaps a tentative date in August outside with limited guests?
I just want you to know that we have considered every possibility, and I don't think anything is off the table at this point. But there are so many variables that we have to consider, from one, the Michigan Safe Start Plan, to two, Mr. Van Gotham spoke to the construction projects. I mean, we have significant projects taking place both at Lakeland and Milford High School. There's a very good possibility those projects will not be complete until the end of August. I mean, I know for certain we have Consumers Energy will be laying pipeline directly in front of Milford High School, and we have all of the asphalt and those parking lots being removed on that campus as well. I do not foresee that work being completed, frankly, even before school starts. We're going to need to figure out ways with which our students and staff can gain access to the building. So there are so many factors to consider, but I can assure you that we have looked at that as a possibility, and we haven't closed the door on anything, but we feel like the plan we've put in place does bring some closure and some formality to what our seniors deserve. And this way we can ensure that we've done something to celebrate the successes of our students while keeping our eye towards the future.
So that we're coming to the end of our coffee hour. It's 7:27. We have about 3 minutes left. Just one final comment. Thank you for hosting this forum. We're thankful for your continued advocacy and support. We are here to help. Lean on us. So I don't know if anyone has anything to add to that. Dr. Salah, do you have any closing comments?
No, I really appreciate that sentiment. And like I said earlier on the conference call, I've received so many kind emails from our teachers that, even just today, Bob Green sent an email. He's the band instructor over at Lakeland High School. He's a phenomenal educator. And he just said, 3 sentences: "I'll do anything you need me to do to help Huron Valley schools," because that's how much he cares. And so, Bob, shout out to you. But it's not only our teachers that I get that from. I get that from our principals as leaders in their communities. I get it from community members, like the comment that was just made. We just are so grateful for this community and all your continued support, and anything you can do to support from the advocacy perspective. I talk with our legislators all the time, but they want to hear from parents as well. They want to hear from the constituents that they represent. Your voices are powerful. Your voices are loud. And so we want to continue providing exemplary programs for our students in the academics, the athletics, and the arts. And the only way we do that is if we don't sustain massive cuts in a given year. So again, your attention to the advocacy is greatly appreciated. And I think that's it for this evening. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kim, for moderating the questions. And I just appreciate the whole COAT team for being here and supporting the work of the district. Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.